So it just talks about experiences that I've had with family members. Particularly, I wrote it during the height of the pandemic because there was so much disconnect going on in communities with families, even in the long term care setting, right? If you can think back, a lot of family members were isolated from being able to go visit family members, and it was just a very
Mhm.
difficult time. And that is how the book came about.
Be the change you want to see. Make a difference by giving your money a purpose, a mission to do good. Welcome to Money with Mission, where we show you how to create passive income so that you have options for how to work and how to live your life while leaving a legacy of positive social impact.
Welcome to the show, Frankie. I'm really excited to have you here. I already introduced you saying this conversation is a little different than most of the ones we do on Money with Mission because we're mostly talking about learning about investing and how to get our money to work for us. We don't often talk about the why we need to have our money working for us or having somebody on that talks about that. But as a dementia care, I'm going to call you provider, but I know that's not what it exact words, and helping people work through those kinds of things. Talk about actually, first of all, let's talk about how you got here. How did you get to doing this kind of thing? Did you have someone you had to take care of that got you here? Is it just how you were born? And tell us about that.
Yep, absolutely. This question takes me back to like when I was a young child, right? So growing up with my parents in the household, I saw my mother and my maternal grandmother really look out for and take care of my great grandmother. Then as I look back and kind of transition to adolescence, a lot of people in my community, I can think of probably at least five other family members wrapped around the aging person that was in the family and kind of took
Mhm.
care of them and looked after them. So as I transitioned to in early adulthood, I think about my grandmother. And so prior to the relationship with my grandmother, really what got me started and being interested in working with older adults was just seeing the importance of looking out for our aging family members. The only thing that was missing in early childhood and my adolescence was there was no conversation about preparation, like preparing for the care, thinking about what care options there are, even asking someone what type of care they would want if they ever needed it. And so that was the missing piece for my grandmother. So I saw all of these kind of multi-generational households, everybody looking out for the older adult, but the
Mhm.
missing piece was how do we pay for it? What will that care look like? And who's going to help manage that care?
Yeah, the emotional toll it can take on a caregiver, I don't think is ever talked about because we know in many ethnicities, it is on the family to take care of that older person. And unlike in the United States anyway, we tend to spread out and then one family member ends up being the one doing all the care. And that is hard. I did that with my mom. Love my mom. It was just hard. And I don't think you can even appreciate how challenging it is to be a caregiver. Let's talk about that a little bit. I know you talk to a lot of people who, matter of fact, I connected you with a friend of mine who is helping to take care of her, or not helping, she is taking care of her husband with dementia. And just talking to her and hearing all the things that she's got going on. Talk a little bit about what you've experienced with with families that you're talking to about long-term care and how they're giving the care to their loved one.
Absolutely. So if I look back over the time that I've been working with family members, most people don't want to think about this or say it, but managing care needs can really become burdensome, right? And so nobody wants to hear that word or say that word. Not that the individual is that needs the care, but just the mounting care needs that people just do not know where to start. When they do get a break, they want to use that small window of opportunity to just take a deep breath, right? They don't want to think about who to ask or where paperwork is or where to start. So, unfortunately, most people don't plan ahead enough for their long term care needs. And so, by the time they make it to me, it is when they are at the emergency room, there is a crisis. Someone has fallen, someone has wandered away from home, and so they're not able to go back home just because of safety and security needs. So there's a huge need and there's a crisis. I feel like it's a crisis, like in the healthcare system related to caring for older adults. and aging families. Because most of the time, like you mentioned, there are spouses that are taking care of the other spouse. Most kids have moved away, they have their own families, and they visit as often as they're able to, which may or may not be as frequent as they need to.
So I'm going to back up. Give us a little bit more information about what you do. And just if you want to walk through a particular scenario or however you want to do that so that we can get a better idea of why would we call you or how should we be looking at these kinds of things?
Yep, absolutely. Good question. So essentially, I am as involved as people need me to be. So my whole goal is to help protect the assets and the estate of the family members. And so we do that by planning ahead. And so essentially getting them to take inventory of their finances, their insurance policies. Do they have power of attorneys? Do they have all those things in place? Long-term care insurance, so that they have an idea of what is available prior to needing it. If the person is a veteran, they may have some separate benefits that they may not have even tapped into. And so gathering all of that stuff prior to needing it so that they can have an idea of what is needed. Also helping them to figure out who their care team is, right? What is different about what we do at Autumn Life Solutions is the focus is on the caregiver. If you think about it, most of the time in healthcare, and when we're considering older adults and their needs, everything is wrapped around the person that has the need, right? And most of the time, that's the older adult when they fall, when they have to go to rehab, when they're at the hospitalization. So we look at wrapping services and support around the caregiver. That is what is different because I think of it like an underground community, right? Most of the time, people function in isolation, not because they want to, they just don't know how to get support or where to start. And unfortunately, most caregivers die before the people that they are taking care of.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that if you're thinking about getting older or someone in your family is getting older, we should be having conversations around what that care is going to look like. Am I, as the daughter, son, whoever, going to be the caregiver? Are we going to have someone coming in and you're going to be at home and we're going to have a caregiver coming in on a regular basis? Are we going to have a live-in caregiver? Are you going to go to a home? How is that going to look? That's if we're preparing ahead, those are the kind of conversations we should be having. Is that correct?
Absolutely. All of the things. And then also, sometimes families have to decide if they want to pay someone out of pocket, right? They may not have long-term care insurance. Their family members or church members or community members or neighbors may not be able to just come over for free, right? Several days per week, several hours. And so I have to it's part of it also is like an education gap, right? And so helping people understand like this is an investment so that you can free up your time as the primary caregiver so that you can have time for yourself, right? And so sometimes people will pay someone to come in a few hours if they don't have the insurance to cover it. But you're right, it could be a live-in, it could be companion care, it could be a neighbor or family members. But for the long haul, like there needs to be some planning for long-term care need, just as we plan for everything else, right? Graduation is coming up for a lot of families in the next several weeks, or baby showers, those kind of things. Like this is as important, if not more.
And thank you for bringing that up because we plan for college and we have savings accounts for college. The government came up with the 529, is that what it's called? Savings plan for college, but we don't necessarily talk about saving for sickness, saving for long-term care. It's long-term care insurance. Or is there anything else besides long-term care insurance unless you've saved and you have your own set of money that you can put toward that?
Essentially, is long-term care, like your own medical benefits, although the traditional medical plans don't pay for a whole lot. Most of them will pay for a nursing home, but that is not the ideal level of care for most people. But yeah, not unless you're wealthy and just can afford to pay, but long-term care costs can be very expensive. And so there should be, that's definitely what we recommend, some planning for that.
Frankie, do you have any idea, and I know you probably do, that how much it costs to have, and you can just give an average of a caregiver coming in on a regular basis?
Yeah, essentially, naturally, it could vary depending on the state and those kind of things. but it could cost up to, or someone may be willing to pay up to $30 to $50 an hour. Now, that may sound like a lot, but it depends on the needs of the person, right? So are they
Yeah.
like a total care person with the
Yeah.
person need to be lifted, need to have assistance with going to the restroom and eating, medication reminders, or is it simply companion care, right? So just somebody, they're able to manage everything that they need to manage, but just some company while their family member like goes out to run errands. It can certainly get expensive.
Okay. So even if I'm going to be the caregiver and I'm going to be home all the time taking care of my mother, that we have to keep in mind that there's a cost to that. I can't go to work because I need to be home with my mom, or I'm going to have to pay somebody to be home with her, or there's just a cost to that. And that's what I'm talking about, you guys, when I'm talking about we have to have income coming in outside of saving for retirement, because we all know we get told to go to school, get a job, save your money so you can retire. And nobody talks about all the life in between. And now we're talking about it. We will most likely, there's a sandwich generation. You're talking taking care of your kids, you're taking care of your mom and dad or grandmother or somebody else. And it takes a lot out of you. It really does. So if you could be able to take time off from work and help participate in that care or have more money coming in so you could pay somebody else, what does that do for you and your own mindset and your own health? Because I can tell you my health suffered during the time I was taking care of my mom, not because of mom, but just what Frankie was saying, all the stress around making sure things are happening like they're supposed to happen. And even I'm a physician, not knowing exactly what should be happening.
Right.
And then all the emotional stuff with people getting older and the things going on in their own head with their own mortality. There's a lot. And I'm sure you got way many stories to talk about people losing their minds.
Absolutely. There is a physical toll, there is a financial toll, an emotional toll on being caregivers. Just think about the population of the US, right? And what percentage of those are caregivers. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of them pass away before the people that they are caring for. And so we really have to look at other things. There are other things to consider. There could be your own personal mindset or attitude about caregiving, right? Needing care,
Mhm,
providing care, or aging. And so you have
mhm.
to tap into some of that. There may be cultural considerations, right? Does a particular community or cultural group think that they should care for mom and dad or grandparents in the home, regardless of what, because that is what
Yeah,
they saw prior
yeah.
generations do. And so naturally, things are different now than they were years ago. And so our ability to be able to carry that on may not be realistic for the long haul. Like it is a
Mhm.
long-term commitment for the most part to be a caregiver. We're living longer, which is wonderful with advancements in medicine and technology, but that requires more structure and planning for us to be
Something I
successful.
something I just thought is that being a caregiver doesn't necessarily mean being the one in the home taking care of the person. He could be the one making sure that everything is happening, that the person that's supposed to be there to take care of them is there. Making sure I have one of my clients is making sure her mom is going to get a house and that she may have to build it to make sure it's all just the way they want it to be for as her mom gets even older. So there's a lot to think about in being a caregiver, and it's not just because in my mind, it was a caregiver as a person there helping get them off the toilet, helping do all those things, but there's a bigger part to that. We may not be the specific one in the house doing the thing, but we are the one making sure that's financially being taken care of. So
Absolutely. There could be
there's
someone in the home, right, as the caregiver, like you mentioned, or it could be like a child that lives in a different city in a different state, but they are able, because of the use of technology, they're able to navigate everything, manage appointments, like you said, ensure that if the home needs to be upfitted with any kind of safety equipment, that happens. They vet caregivers for their loved ones. So I'm not sure how we got to the place of feeling like caregiving has to be you're physically in the home doing the day-to-day duties of a caregiver, but there's so many different options. And like you mentioned, being a long distance caregiver is one of those.
it's often where it comes down to the way we are living in the United States now. Nobody we don't live in those communities like we used
Absolutely.
to, mom and dad, and everybody lives in the same block and or same town. It's not the way it is very much anymore. You wrote
Absolutely.
a book. Tell us about your book and why you
Yes, I
wrote it.
did. I wrote a book called Elephant in the Room because oftentimes the topic of long-term care and caregiving is an example of an elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. And people dance around and walk around until, like I said, you wind up in the ER and it's a crisis situation. So it just talks about experiences that I've had with family members. Particularly, I wrote it during the height of the pandemic because there was so much disconnect going on in communities with families, even in the long-term care setting, right? If you can think back, a lot of family members were isolated from being able to go visit family members, and it was just a very
Mhm.
difficult time. And that is how the book came about.
Okay, okay. So it's telling stories about things you've experienced and helping people to be able to navigate through this whole thing?
Absolutely. Just sharing tips, whether that is like emergency preparedness for if it's some type of COVID was one of those things, or if it's a
Mhm.
hurricane or whatever, considering the emotional well being of the caregiver as well as the family member, talking about the importance of the caregiver taking care of themselves. As we mentioned, most of them do not do that. If you think about one of the chapters is called Ditch the Drive Through Mentality, because if we think about fast food and drive-throughs, a lot of times those are not healthy options, not sustainable long term. But a lot of caregivers try to get 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, but they really need to carve out time and put themselves first, right? They have to be on the list of people that they're taking care of.
You said several times caregivers often die before the person they're caring for.
Absolutely.
And just go into that a little bit more. I know we've been dancing around that subject and you've said a lot of reasons why, but let's just get right into it. Why do caregivers die before the person they're caring for?
Because there is a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame associated with needing assistance, asking for assistance. They don't want to look like they are not the experts on the situation that they're managing or what the needs of their family member are. So a lot of people operate in isolation, which is very difficult. And so they don't rely on the community that they have. They may not even know that there is a community. A lot of times we hear a lot about Alzheimer's, dementia, those kind of things, right? Those kind of
Mhm.
things get a lot of press essentially. And so there are people that are outside of those particular categories that still need assistance. And so caregivers, they don't eat well, they don't take care of themselves, they don't go to medical appointments. Like you said, there's a struggle for them to even go to work to continue to have their regular income. And so they just do not put themselves first. And so that emotional toll, that physical toll, that mental toll, it just wears them out, and so they do
It's
wind up dying.
huge. It's
Mhm,
huge. And I was just my own personal taking care of my mom got to depression. I
mhm,
was at the doctor saying, I'm depressed. Okay, here's medicine and here's a therapist.
right,
And I'm not very much of a medicine person. So I did start the medicine and started working out, which
mhm,
is a part of it was for me, it was exercise wasn't for my body, it was for my mind, which
absolutely,
and so it was a taking a time out. Yes, I got up at 7:30 in the morning to go to the gym to do the workout, but then I could come home and be a little more of a pleasant person for my mother to deal with and not in my office or in my own room crying because I don't know how I'm gonna ever deal with this anymore. So it is important if you don't take anything else away from this. If you are a caregiver, so important for you to take care of yourself. And I'm just like, I don't know what I'm talking about. If you're a caregiver, all the people out here who are physicians, mothers, fathers, we're
absolutely,
all caregivers. We just don't think
absolutely.
about that.
Yep,
And we often do not take care of ourselves. As physicians, we all know the physician suicide rate is high for so
mhm,
many reasons, but one of the biggest ones is not taking care of ourselves.
right,
Caregivers across the board, everywhere, hear us out.
yep,
Take care of yourself. Buy the
absolutely,
book, The Elephant in the Room, and it's gonna talk about caregivers in a specific area, but expand that out to every caregiver there is that is, air quotes, feels like they're trapped in a
absolutely,
situation. And
right,
that is just the intensity of the situation. You feel trapped. All right, you guys, we're gonna come back a little bit. So, you have your book, The Elephant in the Room. How can people get that?
Yes, so it is available on Amazon, so they
Okay.
can get the paper copy, or they can actually get an ebook also, so that's available
Okay.
on Amazon. Yep.
Amazon. It'll be in the show notes, you guys. And if somebody's out there thinking, "Oh my gosh, I never thought about all this, and we have long-term care insurance, but I don't know about all these other things that I need to know," what should they do? How can they reach out to you? Do you talk to people across the country, or are you just in your state? How can that work?
Yep, good question. So yes, I do talk to people across the country. They're able to reach out to me, Autumn Life Solutions or Frankie Brown on social media. They're welcome to visit the website or give me a call. So I'm definitely available for people if they want to set up a strategy call just to get started to see if how we can work together.
Okay. So that was Autumn Life Solutions, and
Yes,
that's where on Facebook, Instagram, all those
yes,
things. And
absolutely.
then Frankie Brown, what is your website? FrankieBrown.com? What's your website?
Nope. autumnlifesolutions.com. And then
Okay.
I'm also on social media, Facebook as Frankie Brown. So either one, they can either reach me at Autumn Life Solutions for the business, or if they just want to reach out personally, Frankie Brown.
You guys, and I know we're saying all this, you're not gonna be able to read it if you wanna read it. It's gonna be in the show notes. So don't panic. Don't go you can rewind it and write it down, but it'll be in the show notes too. You guys, Frankie, thank you so much for coming on. I hope this has reached somebody so you know that being able to have income coming in can help you be able to take better care of all the people in your life that you're taking care of. That's the main thing I want everybody to know. I want everybody to know Frankie so that when you before you get to that place where you're having to
Absolutely.
figure it out, you can have it figured out. Get us having these tough conversations. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much, Frankie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's really good. All right, you guys. See you next time.
You've been listening to Money with Mission. There are projects happening right now where you can have a great financial return while positively affecting the lives of others. To learn more about our opportunities, go to moneywithmission.com.